Jen and Kyle Bethune, they're also YouTubers. They're huge van life YouTubers. And the situation was they were pretty impacted by the situation. I think it's probably closer to home. They're in the same areas. They're living a similar lifestyle. A van life YouTuber goes missing. They're also a van life YouTuber. I think it was just something that was consuming a lot of their thought and minds at the time. And everybody in their friend groups were talking about Gabby's disappearance. But the dates just weren't adding up. They were not in Grand Teton on the 27th. So there's no way that Jen and Kyle would have seen anything. Also, this is around the time of Jen's son's birthday. He would have turned 17, but he passed away in a car accident when he was 7. So this is all around kind of like a bit of a difficult time. And suddenly she gets a text message on the day of her son's birthday. Red White Bethune, that's her YouTube channel. Check any footage you have. The timeline has changed.
Who's texting?
Friends. They're like, you got to check your footage. The authorities release, actually, Gabby and Brian were likely in Spread Creek August 27th or the 28th.
Instead of
1st to the 24th, which are the exact days that Jen was there. 27th and 28th. Jen says, all the color and blood and life drained from my body. I was like, I have that. I have footage. Red, White, and Bethune, they're searching for the footage, okay? There's this one night that they keep thinking about it, and they were like, no, we're crazy because the timelines weren't matching up. They saw this white van parked. It was a Ford, and they remember seeing it parked because it had Florida license plates. Jen and Kyle are from Florida. So they're like, oh my God, Floridians all the way in Wyoming. And like when you go to these campgrounds, it's all about making friends. Like that's what the van life is about. Half of it is making friends with strangers. So they're like, we should talk to them. But nobody was in the van, so they just drove past it. That's what they remember. But then the timeline, because the FBI was like 21st to the 24th, they're like, I mean, there's got to be lots of vans from Florida. But now the timeline has changed to the exact days that they're there. So they start scrolling through all their footage. And the fact that they have this is crazy. So they have this dual GoPro setup. One GoPro is facing outside their car as they're driving. So you almost see like you're the driver of the car. One is facing inside. So if one of them is driving and vlogging, you're going to get dual POV. Like that's the road that we're on. And here's my face. And sometimes they just leave it on for B-roll, or sometimes they just forget to turn it off. So they start scrolling through all the footage, and on their left, they spot the white van. And this does help the FBI narrow down the search area to a much more isolated location, a much more accurate location.
What's going on there?
It is believed that by the time that they are driving past the van, Gabby is already deceased. And she was probably already placed in her final resting place. So they were able to use this footage, find the exact campsite, and then narrow down the search area. And with that, they have horseback teams. They have lots of search and rescue out there. They have teams on foot. One park ranger that was out there that day looking for Gabby, he says, all of a sudden, because they took this tip, all of a sudden, one of the team members saw what they believed was the body of an individual. She was laying on her side. She was wrapped up in a sweater. It was Gabby. She was laying in a fetal position, wrapped up in a sweater. It was one of her favorite sweaters. Her hiking boots were laid next to her. There was evidence that someone tried to start a fire nearby, but there were no fire-starting materials. The whole thing looked weird, staged almost, as if someone thought park rangers would believe maybe she got lost and tried to start a fire but died from the elements. Near her body is a revolver speed loader with ammunition and 2 arrows, which they find similar weapons in Brian's home, family home, and van later. The cause of death for Gabby is manual strangulation as well as blunt force trauma. Gabby's stepdad, Jim, was in Wyoming, so the whole family, they were trying to be very strategic about how to find Gabby. So Jim was in Wyoming. I believe Nicole her mom was in New York. I think her dad was in Florida. Like, they're just trying to get all hands on the ground, like boots on the ground. Everyone's looking.
When was this now by this point? Like when?
September.
How long has it been?
It's been like 2-3 weeks. Jim had to call his wife, Nicole, Gabby's mother, and he had to call Joe, Gabby's father, and Gabby's stepmom, Tara. Jim says she was laying on the ground for weeks in the wild. I mean, he's not telling them this. Later in interviews, he says, she was just left there like a piece of trash by someone who was supposed to love her. And I had to pick up that phone and compose myself. I had to call Nicole, get Joe on the phone, and Tara in a conference call and tell them from 2,000 miles away that our daughter was dead. It was the worst phone call I've ever made in my life. Joe Petito posts a picture of Gabby with the words, "She touched the world." Nicole says, I watched those shows. I watched 60 Minutes and Dateline and 48 Hours, and I always found it interesting. It's always somebody else's family. You just never ever think it's going to be yours. Nicole and Gabby's stepdad say, at that moment, all we could pray for was she found peace and she was looking at the mountains behind her. And maybe at that moment, she would just put herself in a better place. That's all we could hope for. Less than 24 hours after Gabby's autopsy is released, Christopher Laundrie, Brian's dad, is outside the family home mowing his lawn. There's protesters, news reporters outside. He's mowing his lawn. I mean, it's pretty clear Brian probably killed Gabby, but why are you mowing your lawn and why would he kill her? August 22nd, 10 days after the Moab incident. So this is, we didn't really know this at the time 3 years ago when the case was unfolding. This was more so confirmed through the Netflix documentary. August 22nd, 10 days after the Moab incident. So this is 5 days prior to her estimated date. Gabby sends a text message. Hi, I'm sure I'm the last person on the planet you want to hear from. I would really love to talk to you. I'm only alone until tomorrow. She sends it to a guy named Jackson. This is her ex-boyfriend. So Jackson calls her and he says, Gabby was most certainly my first love, but just the time that we were together, it just wasn't right for the two of us. We dated for a year before she dated Brian. And when I noticed through social media that they were dating, you know, they were a little bit of ways into their trip. It was definitely a very eye-opening experience for me because that was something that we spoke about wanting to do together. Buying a van and traveling the country, seeing her being all happy and smiley and laughing on videos and stuff like that. I definitely was like, dang, that was supposed to be us. But I was still super happy for her because I knew that's what she wanted. On August 22nd, I got a text from Gabby. My mind started racing. I was like, hey, I'd love to be able to talk to you. It's been a while. It'd be nice to catch up. And I called her. A lot of what we talked about was just catching up, how life was going for her, for me. It was real late in the evening whenever we got to the end of the phone call. I just got the vibe that she may have still needed somebody to talk to after we hung up. So I was like, hey, if you need to talk again, let me know. I was like, I'm okay with that. And during this time is when she was like, kind of hinted at the fact that she had gotten in a bit of an argument. She was like, I have a plan. I think I'm going to leave him. I'm going to do it. I have to figure out when to do it. And that's when I was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean you have a plan? From the sound of her voice and the way she was saying it, it was like she wasn't sure of what he would do or what he could do. I think she was wanting to get away, but she just didn't know how to do it. The fact that she reached out to me kind of told me that, like, hey, maybe she feels safe talking to you, or maybe she felt like that I was the only person that would understand, or I was the only person that might want to even listen at all. And I just kind of was making sure that she knew, like, be very careful. I feel like the phone call was a cry for help. I think she was wanting to get away, but just didn't know how to do it. They were able to talk in depth because Brian had left to go to Florida to clear out a storage unit. Very bizarre and random. He just like flies to Florida and his parents are like, why are you paying for a storage unit when we have this extra room that you can just use as a storage unit? So they're like, save money by flying all the way here to clear out the storage unit. It's very bizarre. So he flies out. Gabby is in Utah. She stays at a hotel. And that's probably how she was able to even reach out to somebody. And it seems like while she's alone, she's starting to see how toxic her relationship with Brian is, and maybe she does want to leave. Also, I do want to say, experts say it seems that Brian has rooted his entire self-worth on his relationship with Gabby. Now, a few days later, August 27th, 2021, Brian is back in Wyoming with Gabby, and Gabby messages Jackson saying, hey, I'm in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and it reminded me of you because his name is Jackson. Now, side note, I don't think I saw many people, but I do see some people that are like, well, why did she reach out to her ex-boyfriend? It's very common for victims of DV to reach out to ex-partners, even if they're not trying to like rekindle a relationship. Because I know in a lot of situations, it's like reaching out to an ex while you're in a relationship sounds crazy, right? But with DV situations, it's not like they're trying to rekindle a relationship or trying to quote cheat, which is what they're often accused of. It actually makes a lot of psychological sense. So they're trying to find some sort of evidence that their current situation is abusive. Like they're trying to get confirmation. And sometimes reaching out to an ex-partner that was not abusive is trying to root yourself in reality of like, no. That is what a relationship is. This is not what a relationship is. But you can't, it's harder to do that when you reach out to your parents or when you reach out to your sister, you know? It is believed that Gabby was killed the night of August 27th and August 28th. Brian goes on multiple hikes and takes multiple pictures, scenic pictures. Some of them are scenic hiking pictures. Some of them are decaying animal bones. And then on the 29th, Brian is hitchhiking. He's also calling his mom, Roberta Laundrie. They have back and forth phone calls that seem out of the norm. Like he's not one to call his mom and talk for an hour. One of them lasts nearly an hour, 55 minutes. That same day, Brian is hiking, sending messages to Gabby's phone. The text from Brian to Gabby reads, "Hey honey, I'm just calling to let you know I made it to Coulter Bay. I think the campground is still a little ways up the road. I'm gonna go check it out. Let me know when you're on your way. No rush." Later, another one is sent to Gabby's phone. "Still no rush. Just wanted to say that I'm sitting in front of the visitor center now. Can't wait to see you for the mountains across the water. Wish you could fly the drone here." Another one. "I'm surprised you're even getting my text. And do you think you could pick me up tomorrow instead of Monday? I don't think I can do 2 more nights." Call records show that none of the messages sent to Gabby's phone are read or even opened until Brian gets back to the van from his little hiking trip, aka alibi creating trip. And then all of a sudden, Gabby's phone texts Brian, "Yeah, sure, baby. We'll do 1 more night of disperse, and then we've got our site at Coulter Bay for 2 nights." Brian responds, "I love you, honey. See you tomorrow." But cell data shows him at the van at the time, and it's very clear he's talking to himself. It's likely that the hitchhiking was done to create a stronger alibi. "See, these people saw me hitchhiking away from Gabby. I wasn't even there. I don't know what happened to her," is the theory. A text is also sent from Gabby to her mom August 30th, allegedly reading, "No service in Yosemite." Although she's nowhere near Yosemite. She's near Yellowstone. But this was likely sent by Brian to allegedly make her mother believe that Gabby is alive and they're going towards Yosemite now.
Okay, so to get the timeline straight, right? He committed murder on 27th.
Likely, yes.
And then he spent multiple days creating a trail of like photos, text messages, even hitchhiking on multiple cars, just like leaving random things that's easily debunkable to create like some sort of a,
Yes.
Okay.
And it seems like Gabby's grandpa was even reaching out to her because at one point, Gabby's phone texts her mom saying, "Can you help Stan? I keep getting his voicemails and missed calls, but my phone doesn't even ring. There's no service." Nicole, that's when her radars are going off because Stan is Gabby's grandpa. Who calls him Stan? She calls him grandpa. And it's just very strange. At that point, Brian starts driving the van back to Florida. He uses Gabby's debit card to fill up on gas. He also Venmos $700 from Gabby's Venmo account to his account with the note, "Goodbye, Brian. I will never ask you for anything again." Gabby is deceased. Brian is sending and stealing from his fiance that he killed. I don't even want to say allegedly because he does confess. By September 1st, Brian is back in Northport, Florida with Gabby's van without Gabby. And then September 17th, the FBI get a call. The Laundries want to talk. But they don't want to talk about Gabby. They want to talk about Brian because he's missing. The chief of the Northport Police Department say 2 people went on a trip, 1 person returned, and that person isn't cooperating, and now they're missing. And now the search begins, with one neighbor of Brian stating to news outlets, "Turn yourself in, Brian. They're hunting you." And that is the end of part 1. Part 2 is coming. We're going to go over Brian going missing, Brian being found, more journals, his mom's alleged involvement, and some crazy letters that she's writing, as well as multiple lawsuits and conspiracies that Brian Laundrie is hidden under the house. So with that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to check out the Gabby Petito Foundation, and I will see you in the next one. Be safe.
This episode is brought to you by Grammarly, and thanks to their support and support from viewers like you, today I'm able to make a donation to the Doc Ellis Foundation. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard of Grammarly, and it's often viewed as a spelling and grammar tool, and it definitely is, but it is so much more than that, friends. Many people don't realize it also has a ton of great AI features that help professionals at work with projects, proposals, presentations, and more. Grammarly is an AI writing partner that helps professionals write better and faster so they can get to work and move projects forward. And Grammarly works wherever you work. Over 500,000 different apps and websites. I've even got the Grammarly keyboard installed on my phone, and it's so helpful even when I'm texting. I'm constantly working across different platforms, whether that's Google Docs, emails, Slack, Canva, so many more. And the fact that I'm able to use Grammarly in all of those places is just amazing. Grammarly has 14 years of best-in-class communication AI that is trusted by tens of millions of professionals. And what's really cool is you can get personalized writing suggestions. So sometimes, I'll type out an email and Grammarly is like, hey friend, this is how this could sound so much better. And it always does. And the best part is Grammarly is free to use and try out. So if you're not using Grammarly, you are totally missing out, friends. You can sign up and download Grammarly at grammarly.com/KendallRae. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to True Crime with Kendall Rae. Thank you for joining me today. And if you are new, then welcome. So happy to have you. Be sure to click subscribe. So today we have a case that is so extremely frustrating, very upsetting. And I think when you hear the details of this one, I was going to say you'll be shocked, but maybe you really won't be, especially if you've been watching my content for a long time. Some of the things that we're going to go over today, probably really won't be that shocking to you, but disappointing nonetheless. Today, we're going to be talking about the murder of 16-year-old Susana Morales. Now, I first heard Susana's story a few months ago, and I decided to wait to cover it until we had a bit more information and as we were getting closer to the trial of her killer, which was originally scheduled for June 3rd. However, it has been postponed, which I will explain later on. But I wanted to give you guys all of the facts as up to date as I have them so that you can have all the information possible before the trial actually does begin, if you want to follow it. And I hope you do, because this family really needs support. And I hope that by sharing this story, more people can be aware of what happened to her and see what a bright young woman she was, and that more people can root for justice and root for her killer to be convicted. Before we jump in though, I wanted to make a quick announcement that there are still some NECMEC items available in my merch shop, which is kendallrae.shop. We have really limited quantities. You guys have been selling these out like crazy, and we are working to produce even more products for the future. You can find everything that we have available at kendallrae.shop. And as always, 100% of the profits are donated. And really quickly, a highlight I wanted to mention that just came out in NECMEC's 2023 Impact Report was how National Center for Missing and Exploited Children assisted law enforcement, families, and child welfare with 28,866 missing children cases and had an overall 88% recovery rate. The work that they do is so impactful. And if you're able to pick up one of our items or make a donation to our campaign, we would really appreciate it. And as always, big thank you to everyone who has supported the campaign so far. But let's go ahead and jump right in. So Susana Morales was born on June 24th, 2006 in Atlanta, Georgia, and she was the youngest of 3 daughters. Besides her mom, Maria, and one of her sisters, Jasmine, the rest of their family hasn't been as outspoken in the media, so it's just really their 2 names that I'm going to be sharing with you guys today. Susana's loved ones say that she had an incredibly kind spirit, and that's really what they want her to be remembered for at the end of the day. She was also described as funny, sweet, sarcastic, and not to mention bubbly and super passionate about music. Not only was she a talented singer and piano player, but before her disappearance, she had been teaching herself how to play the guitar and the ukulele. On top of that, Susanna was very active. She was a cheerleader at Meadow Creek High School, where she went to school as a freshman. Now, I just mentioned a second ago that she was born in Atlanta, but her and her sisters were actually raised in a suburb just outside of Atlanta called Norcross. And it was there that she grew up, went to school, and lived a pretty normal life. I mean, nothing about her life leading up to her murder would have made you think that anything like this would have happened. From what I could tell, she was a super mellow teen. She was well behaved. She wasn't doing anything to get herself in trouble, wasn't sneaking around or, doing any of the typical things that most teenagers, 16-year-olds would do. Susanna was very responsible. And if she ever went somewhere, she would always text her mom, let her know what she was doing. Her mom and her were very close, and she really kept her in the loop. And that's exactly what she did on the night she went missing. She did everything right. She was in full contact with her mom about where she was going, what she was doing, and that's why it was so bizarre to everyone when she just stopped responding. If her plans had changed, she would have texted, called, let somebody know, and that's why it was so strange that suddenly there was radio silence from her. Now, I am getting a little bit ahead of myself, so let me explain what exactly happened that night. So let's go back to July 26th, 2022. And that day was a completely normal day for Susanna. It was summer break, so she wasn't in school, but she spent part of that Thursday helping her mom at work to make a little extra money. Then after that, she came home around 4 p.m. And by 6 p.m., she told her mom she was going to walk over to a friend's apartment, which were in the Sterling Glen apartments. And just to give you a little context here, this apartment complex was less than a mile from her house, so it wasn't weird or out of the ordinary for her to be walking there in any way. In fact, she had gone there several times before, and like all of those other times, her mom was totally cool with it. And honestly, I can't stress enough how close this was and how she had done this several times before. I mean, it was pretty much just behind her house. She had to just walk a block to get there. But this time was different than all the other times because after leaving her house that evening, she never returned. Even after she had texted her mom at 9:40 p.m., letting her know she would be back soon, she never showed up. Of course, her mom called her, texted her repeatedly, could not get a response. So the next morning at 9 a.m., her family went to the police station and reported her missing. The Gwinnett County Police Department was notified of Susanna's disappearance in the morning of July 27th. However, I'm sure it'll shock none of you to hear that they did not take this report seriously. And they did the same thing we have seen so many times, which truly, I think nothing pisses me off more in true crime than this. But they told her family that they needed to wait 48 hours to report her missing and that she had probably run away, which is the typical response we see with many teens, especially minority teens. This is so frustrating, and I always drive this home for people in case, God forbid, you are in this situation one day. You do not have to wait any specific amount of time before reporting someone missing. That is a myth. It's still, I can't believe even to this day, the police still try to pull this in some counties. But you need to know that you 100% can report someone missing immediately. You do not have to wait any amount of time. And for them to just assume she had run away and suggest that to her family is so wildly offensive because yes, of course, sometimes teenagers do run away. Sometimes they do not, and there is something more sinister that's going on that needs to be dealt with immediately. And how offensive to her family to say that when they know that there's no way she had just run away. And of course, they tried telling this to the police that she wouldn't have run away. She was supposed to be coming back very shortly, just stopped replying. It's totally out of character for her. But they would not listen. Instead, they just kept insinuating that she had run away and that there was nothing they could do because there wasn't enough evidence that anything else had happened. And it just pisses me off so much to hear things like this. And I'm sure you all feel the same way too. Like, what more do they need? A giant sign that says foul play here for them to care, for them to listen? There isn't always going to be blatant evidence that a crime has occurred. Oftentimes there is not. And whose responsibility is it to find that evidence? Oh, right. the police. Families like Susanna's are so often put in a position where they have to do their own investigating to prove to the police that they need to care. And it's so twisted. It's so wrong. It truly infuriates me. And like I said, I'm sure most of you feel the same way. And like I said, it's something that really everyone should be angry about when hearing things like this. You never know when you yourself could be in this situation and could have to deal with a response like that. Personally, I feel that the same kind of concept should be applied to all police investigations of innocent until proven guilty, but in the sense of assume the worst until you can prove the worst hasn't happened. And I know that's sort of a dream, wishful thinking on my part. I wish it worked that way, but I know in reality, our criminal justice system is beyond broken and so far from being fixed. And I know that we would run into logistical issues with that approach as well, but I think you guys know what I'm trying to say. I believe that if a family is telling law enforcement that they know their loved one didn't run away, that they know something bad happened, that they should believe them and that they should take action immediately. And that just didn't happen here. And guys, they wouldn't even release a statement to the community letting them know of the possibility that Susanna had disappeared. Even if they have phrased it like she was a runaway, despite the fact that that wasn't true, there would have at least been some sort of notice to the public to be on the lookout. Because there still is danger and community help needed, even if Susanna was a runaway. She is 16 years old. But they didn't do anything and refused to do anything. So they left the Morales family with one option, and that was to investigate as much as they could and raise awareness in their community themselves, which is tragically something that so many families have to do when it is, in fact, the job of our law enforcement.
2 weeks have passed since 16-year-old Susana Morales from Norcross was last seen. The family says they saw her the morning of July 26, and that afternoon, she went to a friend's home but never returned back to her house. As you can see here, she was last seen wearing a yellow tank top and light-colored jeans. Gwinnett County police say they have labeled the case as a runaway, but her family disagrees. They're now asking the public to be on the lookout in any way they can.
They see her, the best thing we can do is take pictures, send it to call the police. Because if anything, we're able to recognize her no matter if it's from the side, from the back, from the front. Like, the most important thing we need right now is people to take pictures if you think you see her.
So anyway, in the days and weeks that followed, the Morales family began passing out flyers and asking neighbors and local businesses if they had seen Susanna or noticed anything suspicious, noting that she was wearing a yellow tank top and light blue jeans. And luckily, they did have some help from the community because local businesses did pull security footage, which actually ended up being a big help. In this footage, Susanna can be seen walking near Singleton Road and Indian Trail Lilburn Road just before 10 p.m., which, to put it plainly, she was walking from the direction of Sterling Glen Apartments, where her friend lived, towards the direction of her house, headed home. But if she was clearly walking home, can be seen walking home, what happened? Especially because she was just a few minutes away from actually being home. And this is obviously the question that her family wants to know. And so they bring this footage to the police, supply them with their own evidence. And even then, they're hesitant to say that anything bad could have happened to her. Now, Susanna's phone records were checked, and the police said that they were the ones to do this, although her family has said it was them. But in the end, the point ends up being the same. And the point is that between 10:07 p.m. and 10:21 p.m., Susanna was walking in the direction of her house. But by 10:26 p.m., her phone had pinged near the street Oak Lock Trace, which was about a mile east of her home in the complete opposite direction. So between 10:21 and 10:26, something clearly happened for her to suddenly be in this new location. And sadly, after this, her phone just stops pinging entirely. So this is all they had to go off at this point. So for the next several weeks, Susanna's family continued to be her advocate, rally the community, raise awareness, do whatever they could to try and find Susanna, to at least try and find answers if something had happened. And the one thing that they really desperately needed beyond the help of the police, which would have been nice, but they also really needed help from the local media, which sadly was very limited. Local Spanish news station Telemundo Atlanta were among the first and only news stations to pick up Susana's story from the get-go, and they provided tons of assistance to the Morales family in those early days and weeks. They were constantly reaching out to the police department, asking for any updates on Susana's case and also pressuring them to care more. Maria even said herself in an interview that she felt discriminated against by the Gwinnett County Police Department and that because there was a language barrier, they were not taking her daughter's disappearance seriously. And personally, I completely agree with her. But luckily, with the help of Telemundo Atlanta, they actually got the police to finally take action. Just over a month after Susana disappeared on August 29th, Gwinnett County Police Department put out a press release, which was the first time that they had publicly recognized that she was missing. They said that they had exhausted all leads and were now asking the public to come forward with any information. And the fact that it took them a month to finally make a statement is so wildly offensive, not to mention the fact that they had doubled down and said that they didn't believe Susana was in any danger. Here's the exact sentence. While any missing juvenile is considered endangered at this time, there is no indication